Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Three Questions with. I'm really delighted today to have Muniya Barua, who is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Business London, with us. Always really pleased to be speaking to someone who has taken that step beyond the world of comms and corporate affairs into a full-on leadership role. So thank you for being with us today.
Absolute pleasure, James. Good to be here.
Good to see you. Let's go straight into it, right? So the first dreaded dinner party question of so what do you actually do?
So this is a tricky one, and I guess it's a bit of a cliche to say that it's really varied. But when I look at what I've done this week, it has been quite an eclectic mix of things. So I co-hosted our Business London Planning Awards with the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Regeneration this week. I had a day with the Metropolitan Police and the Mayor of London talking about crime. I've chaired a meeting with some of our members, the business improvement districts earlier this week about their priorities. And I squeezed in a lunch with a member of the Monetary Policy Committee and some of our members. So it's really, really varied. So it's a really difficult one to answer. But I did manage to have a go at this because my daughter's friend is staying with us, and he said, "So what do you do?" And so what I usually say is that I work for a business membership organisation. Our mission is to make London the best place in the world to do business. And what that effectively means is looking at the things that hold businesses back from growing. Fortunately, he mentioned he just got his graduate visa. So I was able to say very practically, well, that was something that we lobbied for to help businesses access the skills they need. So I think that sort of brought it to life for him.
That brief, I would imagine, over the last 8-9 years has changed significantly as we look at all of the impacts of Brexit and everything that's come after that. And I suppose that must have only heightened the importance of what Business London are able to do.
Yeah, I think so. And if we look at the kind of last few years, I mean, we've had Brexit, we've had the pandemic, we've had a really challenging economic and geopolitical environment. So, we sort of dial up and dial down, looking at what really matters to London business. But the goal really is about, what are the things standing in the way of businesses growing? And then we have a really broad-based policy agenda. And, if it's about access to talent, or can you afford for your people to live in the capital? So looking at things like solutions around housing, we're focused on essentially just making it easier for firms to do business.
That housing thing, I think, is someone everyone is feeling, right? Especially post-COVID. I remember the number of my colleagues moved out of London because they knew they were going to have this degree of flexibility, which I think some regret if you go back to 4 days a week in London. But it's a big challenge.
It is a big challenge. And I think, increasingly we're sort of seeing more people coming back into London. So I think you're seeing the number of days that people are coming into the office. I think increasing, if you look at things like transport numbers, and, if you're a bit of a geek, you might look at Transport for London's data. And certainly Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays are pretty busy, and Monday's picking up. And then it tends to be Friday evenings and weekends where you get the kind of leisure. So I think, making sure that the city is a really attractive place to live, work and invest is very high up on our agenda.
Is it hard to get your share of voice in a world where BRC will be thinking about a lot of the things you think about, CBI, BCC, any number of organisations? Is that a big challenge for you guys? Or because of the London focus, does that give you a different platform?
I mean, these are all our friends that you refer to. We work pretty closely and collaboratively with a range of other trade and sector bodies. I mean, one of the things that, particularly during COVID, on making sure that, there was a coordinated response going into government. And we lobby on lots of issues sort of jointly and separately. I guess where I'd see us distinct and complementary to a trade body, because lots of our members are also in sector bodies or in organisations like the CBI, is really what we can do is bring the sort of whole economy voice behind our advocacy. Just a couple of examples of that. Universities on the higher education levy, you've got groups like London Higher and Universities UK who are obviously very, very active on that. But I guess when we sort of say, this is bad for universities, it's bad for London's competitiveness, and what we're doing is we're bringing the heft of our cross-sector members behind those sorts of asks. So I think that does give us a distinctness. But also, if you look at, you've got a government whose central mission is growth. Everyone wants to see growth.
Everyone's favourite word this year, right?
That's the way we pay for our public services, and London's got a really important role to play in delivering and accelerating that growth. I mean, we're responsible for a quarter of the economy, so talking to our members, we see a real window of opportunity for London actually to really lead the charge if government knocks down some of the barriers standing in the way.
Obviously, you still lead policy campaigns in the communications team, as well as now holding a wider leadership role within the organisation. Given that's your background, do you feel that has really aided you in that step up to a senior leadership position, and how might it have done? I know I'm going off piste.
You are a bit, aren't you? Well, I think it helps you galvanise and energise a team. We're a small team of 30 people.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say we punch, above our weight. Yeah. And I think the ability to communicate and land messages with a range of stakeholders stands you in really good stead as a leader. And I think corporate affairs directors looking at, sort of common sort of skill sets, they often have very high Q. So they are, able to understand, listen to different audience viewpoints, then work out how do I make that message land with an audience. So I think that's quite a valuable skill set when you're sort of stepping up into a leadership role.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's some very good answers to more than one question, so I appreciate that.
I thought you just wanted to know what I did for a living, James.
Yeah, but it's so interesting. So much to it, as you said. So, here we are. So if you look back over the course of your career, which has taken you through the CBI and into Business London via a bit of agency work as well, and of course journalism in the early days, is there a singular piece of advice you'd offer your more junior self?
So, yeah, this is a really good question, because I think I have at different points in my career sort of stepped into different roles, different environments, different different comms disciplines, and every step up that has been quite daunting, particularly early on. And I think I'd say to my younger self, it's okay to be scared, and actually that's that's normal, and the stretch is actually quite exhilarating. So I remember when you mentioned my journalistic background. I remember starting out on the Liverpool Daily Post newspaper, which was my first graduate job as a business reporter, and being asked by the then editor, who's one of the most inspirational people I've worked for, to consider becoming night news editor. And I hadn't, I'd had a year or so in post as a reporter. And, I didn't feel ready. And I sort of said, I haven't done a death knock. I haven't done hard news. Everyone's loads older than me. And I remember him saying that actually the best time to go for things is when you're not ready. Because of the stretch. And I've thought back on that every time I've sort of stepped up to do something different. So whether that's going from newspaper to TV to taking on things like policy and stepping up into a leadership role. And similarly, another former colleague told me that it's good to have one foot in your comfort zone and one foot out.
Bang on.
And I think, sort of getting comfortable with the sort of discomfort of not necessarily knowing what you're doing is probably the advice I would give younger yourself. And I say that to my kids as they're entering the world of work.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely spot on. We talk to people about this all the time. It's really important at different points in your career to recognize when you're getting too comfortable. I like to think about it. You need a little bit of fear in at least once a week or once a month sort of thing. You need something that's a little bit scary. Sometimes that you can seek that out without a move or without a promotion. You just have to look at what more can I be doing. But it is a really key indicator. It's like, well, if it's too comfortable now, what's the next big scary thing I can throw myself into?
I think that's exactly right. And I think particularly, I mean, you will see this more, James, that I think for a lot of women in particular, there's that classic thing around, imposter syndrome and can I do all of this role? But I think sometimes it's kind of a leap of faith, and also trying to take some of those different skill sets that you've got and sort of using those in the new role to help you.
And there's also, when you get that new role, it's recognizing they've hired you because they believe you are the person who can do it. You almost, when you step into that, yes, there'll be things to learn, but you are that person. That's why you've got it. And you've normally beaten a really, particularly at this sort of level, right? You start to come up against other high achievers. Throughout most of your career, you might be in a short list of, it's a bit of a mixed bag of people. But when you get to that corporate affairs director role and above, you're up against some really good people. So it's funny how when people get the job, that's when the imposter syndrome sneaks in, because that's the point where you should be going, wow, I'm great. But that's why coaching's so important. That's why I'm so passionate about that as well.
No, I mean, I've benefited from coaching at different stages of my career as well. And I think having a really good support network, one of
Yeah.
the things that, thinking back to younger self, is also having that network of people that, open doors for you, push you through the door, and, speak up for you behind closed doors. Really powerful to have that network.
Yeah. And I think other people always recognize the good and the great in us way before we do, right? That's the reality of it. So having people who can recognize the good work you're doing is really important.
I'm recognizing that in others. I mean, it's really lovely actually to
goes both
see,
ways.
people that you've nurtured and developed, or, gone for a coffee with, going on to really great things.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Well, thank you. That's another excellent answer. I think people will really enjoy hearing that. So I think in some ways this has proven to be the harder question to answer because, quite a lot of corporate affairs people really enjoy working in corporate affairs, as it turns out. But if you weren't in this world and hadn't built your career in and around this environment, what would you be doing?
It is really difficult because I do really enjoy what I'm doing. And if I look back, a lot of the roles that I've done have been in sort of high profile campaigning organizations. So I think that mix of business, politics, and comms is quite an appealing one. I did start out as a newspaper journalist, so I suspect if I wasn't doing this, I would have stayed in some form in the media world. But I did consider staying on at university and doing a PhD. And it was a choice of going to journalism college
Yeah.
and staying on. And I thought I kind of need to get a job. Certainly my parents were very keen for me to get a job, so I didn't do it. But there have been a couple of points where I've thought, oh, I'd quite like to do that, go back to university and study again. And I was at actually one of our university member events, and they had some students there, and they had a mature student who was in her 70s, and she was on about her third degree.
Yeah.
So I thought, God, that'd be wonderful to go back to university. So I think I probably would go back and study.
Lifelong learning thing. How far down the line did you have a view on what you were going to do your PhD on?
Well, I mean, I studied history, and it never really got much further than that.
Well, I think you took the right path in the end, though. I mean, you've ended up with a pretty decent career so far.
Oh, thank you. I'll show you my business plan. Here you go.
Oh wow, there you go.
This is our priorities for the year ahead, and
That
it's
is
all
a
about.
pretty looking thing.
Thank you very much. It's all about seizing that window of opportunity and helping businesses grow. So that's what I'm focused on delivering.
Also looks like it's not too long, right? That's
It's quite pithy.
yeah, pithy's good.
Yeah.
There's that whole thing around Steve Jobs. If you can't make a point really succinctly, then you probably don't understand it deep enough, right? So that's a really good thing. Well, look, I'm so grateful. Thank you for taking the time to do this, and I'm sure people are going to be really interested to listen in on this one. And thank you again.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks, James.